Hello. Hello, my friends of Cosmic Agency. No, I did not lose my mind. This is just a video special of 2 videos for the Halloween season. I never celebrate Halloween. It's not my holiday. In fact, none are. I do not celebrate holidays, not even birthdays. But Daniel James, who is a voiceover of Robert in my channel, gave me an idea. And that idea was already given by him a year ago, but I decided to dismiss it. And that is this Halloween special. First video of 2 is going to be about BigFoot. And here, Daniel James is going to give his testimony of his own experiences with the BigFoot. I recommend all of you to see it, as it's quite gripping. Now, do not pay attention to the way I look, the way I sound, as the information given here today is real and not a joke. The information was given by Swaruu of Erra back in 2018. Now, during the video, you will see that Swaruu of Erra is referring to what happened in so-called Dyatlov Pass incident back in 1959 in the then Soviet Union, where 9 hikers were found dead. They were just traveling, hiking through the area, and then they were found dead in very, very mysterious circumstances. 6 of them supposedly died of hypothermia, and 4, as I remember, 4 of the bodies, or 3, were found in a creek in the water. Some of them had eyes missing, tongue, even eyebrows were missing, and their death was supposedly from physical trauma. And there are a lot of theories about what could have happened there. Well, one of the theories here, information given by our crew, Swaruu of Erra at that time, was that it was yeti, BigFoot. So I'm going to include here an update done by Aneeka a bit later to that original idea that it was BigFoot. And she's going to say what the new conclusions say about that incident, that in the end it was not yeti. So I'm going to include that in the middle of this conversation with Swaruu of Erra. Now, I don't have any more or new information about that incident or about BigFoot itself. If anything comes up, I will let you know. We are going to start with Daniel James. Daniel James and his story of meeting BigFoot, and not only once, but several times. Enjoy it.
Hello, I am Daniel. I am the voiceover artist for Robert on Cosmic Agency, both the website and the YouTube channel. So if you ever hear when Robert is speaking in English, that's me. In this video, I am going to give you a brief summary of my 2 Sasquatch encounters, personal experiences that I have had multiple times throughout my life. This will be a summary of both of those encounters, and you can find a more comprehensive, thorough explanation in a YouTube vlog that I did on my Daniel James YouTube channel, which also has audio recordings that I collected of the Sasquatch encounters. My first encounter was in June, I believe, 2009. My ex-wife at the time, her and I had just moved to New York State from the West Coast, Washington State, and we had driven about a 4-hour drive away from home to a music concert, a music festival. Well, the concert ran late, and so we left late at around 11:30 p.m., and it was about a 4-hour drive through a location called Big Flats, New York, all the way to Niagara Falls, New York, that we had to basically drive overnight. Well, the car that we were driving it was very old and had a lot of miles on it, and we had just driven it all the way across the country to New York State. And as we were driving home through the Big Flats mountain pass, my headlights started to dim and my car died. So my battery completely died. Now, we were in the rolling hills of Big Flats, New York, and so there wasn't many lights, there wasn't many residential district. It was more so, for example, just rolling hills for many miles. We had just passed a rest stop, and as we were broken down now too far away from my family to help us, we decided to walk about a mile back to a rest stop area where we knew that we could ask for help, or at the very least wait until the morning, Sunday morning, where we could get help from my family. So we decided to walk up a little ways where there was going to be a gravel turnaround where the cars could turn around, and we were going to cross the thruway to go back a mile back to the rest stop. As her and I, mind you, it's pitch black. We can't even see anything at all in front of us. It's very dark. As we are walking into the gravel pit where the cars can turn around, we hear a big sudden scuffle in front of us where the dirt and the rocks disturbed, and we stopped in our tracks and we grabbed each other by the hand, and we were very scared because we couldn't see anything. And I suddenly hear this deep breathing, this heavy, I hear this heavy breathing, and I look in front of me a couple feet ahead, and I look up, and the moonlight happens to be the direction that I'm looking, away from me into the sky, and in the silhouette of the moon, I see the shape of what must have been maybe 7.5 feet tall. What we know to be a Sasquatch, because I could hear it breathing, and it was massive and huge, and it was just too dark to make out details, but I could see its shape and the fur in the outline and the silhouette of the moon. And her and I were terrified, because mind you, this was 2009. This was before I had ever gone through anything like a spiritual awakening, and I had a metaphysical spiritual understanding of reality. For me at the time, it was just very scary because I didn't understand this concept of, cryptids and cryptozoology from a more expanded consciousness. So for us, we were just scared. And suddenly in the moment, as we lock up and we freeze, it runs. So now it runs to my right, and as we hear it running, it sounds like it weighs hundreds and hundreds of pounds. You can hear the weight of its footsteps on the gravel, just like a boom, 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 heavy bipedal footsteps, not like an animal. And it runs into the woods towards the direction of where our car is parked. So her and I panic, and we didn't know the safest place to go, to the rest stop or back to the car, so we just ran back to the car and we got in the car. And it's pitch black and we're terrified and we don't know what to do. So we sit there for a few minutes and we're asking ourselves, was that what we think it is? Was it the thing, on TV and the stories and the movies? It had to have been, because it was so large and so deep and so heavy that it couldn't have been anything else, certainly not a person. And so her and I work up the courage to get out of the car, and we decide to walk to the rest stop where we know that we can call for help, or that there at least be people, and we wouldn't be sitting in the pitch black dark in the middle of the rolling hills in our car that's broken down. So we get out of the car, we start to walk on our side of the car towards the rest stop, which we can see the lights in the distance. And as we're walking, we suddenly hear the being, the creature, the entity, tracking with us maybe about 100 feet into the tree line, into the woods away from the thruway. And we hear these large footsteps crunching through the sticks. And her and I, we were holding hands because we're very scared. And we're just like, just keep moving, just keep moving. And as we're getting closer, we're about halfway to the rest stop, we hear that very famous, very stereotypical howl, that call that you may have heard in YouTube recordings or on TV shows that are investigating, monsters. It was like a loud screech, like a howl, and it was so specific and so succinct that when you hear it, you know that it can't be anything other than a Sasquatch. You know that it is a Bigfoot because nothing else makes that type of sound, that call. And it was so real that it like cut through your bones, your body, and her and I are like terrified. We stop and we're holding hands, and then we can hear as it calls out. There was maybe somebody's house or a farmhouse far into the distance with a bunch of dogs. Mind you, at this time it's about 12:30 in the morning, and we hear these dogs barking in the distance because they had heard it too. So at that point, her and I, we just ran. We ran to the rest stop and we got there safely. And we sat there and we collected our thoughts, and mind you, we were still scared because we just didn't have an understanding of reality that I, for example, do now. So it was just a very terrifying experience, but we knew that it was a Sasquatch, and I love to share that story because that was my first experience that I find to be funny, because I grew up and spent most of my childhood in Washington State, where there are a lot of sightings of Bigfoot and there's a lot of face-to-face encounters with the Sasquatch, but I had never had one. I only had my first experience once I finally moved to New York State, the same week that I'd moved there after living in Washington State for 17 years. So I thought that was very amazing, and my partner at the time, her and I, we share that memory together. So my next encounter, and I'm going to do my very best to summarize this as quickly as I can, but I recommend go back to my YouTube channel. There is a vlog from a few years ago where I go into this much deeper, okay? So my partner now, Lauren, her and I are videographers. We film events and films and documentaries and commercials, and we were hired as a videography team to go from Pennsylvania to Mount Shasta, California to film a spiritual retreat. This was a 10-day retreat where we were the official video team. When we got there, the locals who lived in Mount Shasta, California, predominantly in a grocery store, they actually told us that there is a Sasquatch community that is very present in Mount Shasta, California, and that they are actually so common and so recognized by the community of the Mount Shasta people that there is a Bigfoot Day once a year where they actually acknowledge and recognize the Sasquatch species. Now, we thought that was funny. We thought that was cool because everybody at this retreat were very spiritual. We're very conscious at the time, and we're also, now this is many years later in my life, I was very open to cryptozoology and open to extraterrestrials and open to these concepts. I wasn't scared now. If anything, I was more excited. So we were staying in an Airbnb that was deep into the woods. There was a long driveway that led from the main road to our Airbnb that you had to drive down. And a couple nights into the trip, we were all very tired. We were all very exhausted because we were working like 15, 16-hour days without breaks. And one night, I was so tired that I was completely out. And it was my bedroom on the second floor of one side with my partner Lauren. We had a group of 2 rooms downstairs, and then another group of about 4 guys across the house on the other side by the garage. So there's many people staying in this house. Well, one night I wake up and I hear slamming and banging on the walls of the house. I hear rocks and sticks being thrown at the garage door. And I wake up and I'm disoriented, and my partner Lauren, she's shaking me, trying to wake me up, and she's saying, Daniel, wake up. Something's attacking the house. And I was so tired from working all day that I couldn't snap out of it. I could not bring myself to get up and to investigate what this was. I just assumed that it was maybe some of the other guests who were staying in the house were like up doing something, making some noise, and I literally fell back asleep. I'm embarrassed to say I couldn't get up, but I fall back asleep, and in the morning, there was, we did house meetings every day where everybody got together and we all caught up. We had our coffee and our tea and our breakfast, and everybody had told me that there were beings outside of the house that night that were banging on the doors, banging on the garage doors, throwing sticks, and a couple of the guys on the other side, they actually got out of bed and they were looking out the windows, but they were all too scared to go outside because it sounded like we were being attacked, like the house was surrounded. There was sounds on every side. So I remembered, okay, I was partially awake for that, but I couldn't get out of bed to investigate myself, and now they're telling me that there were entities all around the house. They were grunting, they were yelling, they were speaking in a different language. It definitely wasn't human, so we all sort of assumed right then and there that we were having a Bigfoot encounter. Now, I am Blackfoot Native American, okay? And there was another gentleman there named Alexi who is Alaskan Native, and he and I are both very spiritual. We're very open to extraterrestrials and to cryptozoology, and so the following night, he and I had made an agreement, a pact together, to go outside in the dark, down the trail, and see if we can actually maybe make contact or see if there are Sasquatch in the area. Can we sort of have some sort of engagement? Can we have contact? So we go out in the woods, and we're standing there along the long trail that goes to the main road, but has woods all around it. And I'm going to summarize here what happened over the course of about 5 days. Alexi and I went out together as a duo privately, and we made open contact with the Sasquatch for 5 nights straight. Okay? And as I summarize here, we would stand on the main road that was at basically a tree line of foliage and bushes and large pine trees, and we would do clapping patterns. We would do call outs. We would meditate, having feelings and thoughts of peace and love. And we were having open contact with the Sasquatch where they were knocking sticks and rocks together. They were, I would clap 3 times, and then they would knock on the tree 3 times. I would clap once, they would knock once. They would throw pine cones, they would throw rocks. We even heard them running through the tree line, which was pitch black. We couldn't see into it, but we were just standing there like this giant void of forest where they were running back and forth, and we could hear grumblings and vocalizations. And some nights we would go into the tree line deeper so that we would be closer to them, and we would see their shapes and their arms and their silhouettes in the moonlight, grabbing onto like branches and things like that, and we would hear scuffles all around us. It was truly amazing, and we weren't scared. We felt sensation of being in the presence, almost in a sense, of an extraterrestrial and the vibrational energy that comes with that experience. Some would call it frequency dissonance. When you're in the presence of something that is that high of a frequency, you can have like a physiological reaction. We felt that, but we weren't afraid. And I'm summarizing, I'm paraphrasing here, but we had contact with them for many nights. And the 2 things that I want to end this with, I started to do 2 things as the nights progressed into this 5 or 6 nights. One thing I did was I started to leave out food at the base of a very large tree that was in the front yard of our house, of our Airbnb. I left chips, bananas, grapes, bread, chocolate. And each night, I would also place an audio recorder in the window of the kitchen that was facing directly at the tree. So in a sense, I was creating this little activity where they could come and sample the food, and then I would be able to capture the audio on my audio recorder. As the nights went on, I was able to sort of determine certain things that they liked to eat, certain things that they didn't like to eat because they would pick at it or they would leave it. Sometimes the food was moved. I would put things in the tree branches. I would put food at the very base. And yes, I did capture audio of them coming to the tree, eating the chips, eating the food. I do have sounds of that. But what I find to be more amazing is as I left this food each night, on the second to the last night that we were on the trip, and Alexi and I were doing what I call as a contact protocol. The Sasquatch beings, they left me a gift. Now at the base of this tree, there was very hard dirt. The dirt was so hard that you couldn't really work your fingers into it. You couldn't really get into the soil unless you really dug with a tool or something. Here's what I want to show you. The Sasquatch beings in Mount Shasta right where I was leaving the food at the base of the tree, they left me this. Okay? This is a piece of wood. It is what I call a wood chip. Now, this was many years ago, so most of the charcoal is burnt off, but this wood chip was burnt on one side, and then on the other side, it was not burnt. So most of the ash has fallen off over the years, but this wood chip was etched into the dirt, which was very solid, very hard. You could barely get your fingers into it, and it was sticking out of the ground right where the food had been left each night that I was leaving as a gift, as an offering. So when I say wood chip, I think in terms of technology, like a microchip, almost in a sense like if you are in nature, you are a nature entity in a sense. What type of technology do they have? Well, maybe they have all kinds of magic and science that we know nothing about as humans. So I interpreted the wood chip in a sense as more of like a nature-based microchip that more than likely contains some sort of energy or data. But I felt that it was a gift. It was an offering to me for making contact with them each night with my friend Alexi and leaving them food that they could sample and enjoy, almost in a sense as a peace offering, because the first night they seemed aggressive and hostile and everybody was afraid of them. But because myself and Alexi went outside to almost make peace and to make contact, it was almost like we developed a kinship, like a relationship. And here's what I will share. On the very last night, I had a van full of people from the retreat that was coming from our second Airbnb a block away to our personal Airbnb at home where we were living for the 10 days. And on the very last full night that we were all together, everybody had been talking about Bigfoot, Bigfoot, Bigfoot. Everyone's having experiences, encounters. The other house was having on their windowsills, there was appearing rocks. All different types of stones were being left in a row outside of the screen of the windows on the second story of the other house. So everybody was in a Bigfoot frenzy. Well, I had a car full of people that I was driving in a van. And as we were driving home to our Airbnb, we saw, and I promise you this is the fact because everybody in the car saw the same thing, we actually saw a full Sasquatch who was maybe 7.5 feet tall, running right down the middle of the street in front of our car in the headlights. And I said, everybody look, everybody look. And everyone peeks through the window and we all see a Bigfoot running down the middle of the street. And then, I know it sounds fantastic, but before our very eyes, the Bigfoot gets down on all fours and it shapeshifts into a wolf with a big, long, bushy tail that we could see dragging behind it. And then it shapeshifts into a black bear. And we're all witnessing this thing sort of transforming right before our very eyes. Now, when I say that it shapeshifts, it didn't mutate organically a creature changing into another, but it almost seemed like it was phasing in and out, almost like ghostly. The image of the Sasquatch and the image of the wolf and the image of the bear were almost overlaying each other opaquely until it ultimately ended up as a black bear, where it stopped in the middle of the road and it blocked our car so that I couldn't drive any further. And then it turned back and it looked at us, and it's right in the middle of the road in our headlights. Now, the craziest thing is that the Bigfoot that turned into a black bear, I know it sounds crazy, it still had his Sasquatch feet. As in, his back feet still looked like giant humanoid feet, but the front feet looked like bear paws. And I promise you that everybody in the car saw the same thing to corroborate the story, so that you know I'm not crazy. But this was an amazing experience that we had over the course of these 5, 6, 7 days. The very last morning that we were there, we had to leave the Airbnb at 3 a.m. to catch our plane. And I took my partner Lauren out in the woods by myself, and I said, I want to see if they will say hello to you. right before we leave, because we were just going to get our bags and get in the car and leave forever. And I took Lauren outside and I did my clap where I clapped 3 times. And then in the woods, they called back 3 more knocks to basically say goodbye. So it was amazing for Lauren to see the Sasquatch with us and then hear those knockings coming from the woods. And that was an amazing experience that I'll never forget. And that I forgot to tell you, that was 2019 was the year that happened. And so those are my 2 Sasquatch encounters. Once again, if you'd like to see a more thorough explanation in my YouTube vlog, just go to Daniel James on my YouTube channel, and you can find the audio that I recorded from Mount Shasta as well too. And so that is my story, sharing with you the Cosmic Agency community. Thank you very much to Gosha, my friend, for keeping me involved in Cosmic Agency all these years. I very much enjoy being the voice of Robert, and I hope you guys enjoy these stories. Happy Halloween if you celebrate, happy holidays, and we'll see you in the next video.
First conversation, 2018. Conversation with Swaruu of Erra.
What do you know about Yeti? What is it?
The Yeti is the same creature as BigFoot, like the black bear and the polar bear. Both are bears. They are semi-intraterrestrial anthropomorphic creatures. They are highly telepathic, so it is difficult to see them. They are almost or semi-intraterrestrial because they live in not very deep cavities that they themselves hide with doors made of nature, camouflaged. They are mostly carnivores and are responsible for most of the disappearances of people in the national parks of the USA. They pull their victims from spider holes like the Viet Cong. One moment the girl is there and the next moment she is not. Governments know about these creatures and hide this, which is why they choose to respect national parks, because they also have esoteric cabal reasons, Illuminati entities involved, at least in their minds. There are positive ones, as with everything, but most are shy but fierce. They are 3 to 4 meters tall. Chewbacca in Star Wars is one placed there by the Cabal under the agenda of telling the public on the sly that the BigFoot are linked to UFO activity. Chewbacca is a BigFoot. The negatives have modified it, like any other race, for warlike purposes. And an example of this is the Yeti that was released by the reptiles as a test and is the cause of the strange deaths that occurred in the case of Dyatlov in Russia, where there was also radiation from the negative ship that came down to release this creature. Now, in this moment, I'm going to interrupt, as, like I explained before, I'm going to include the conversation between Aneeka and Robert back in 2019, where Aneeka is explaining actually what the new data suggests that really happened there.
By the way, yesterday concluded the Taygetan investigation into what happened at the Dyatlov Pass. Again, we don't have a lot of firm data. Obviously, the data we have on which to base the investigation has to be of human origin, because that comes from Earth. However, we did compare the evidence with records of incoming and outgoing Federation spacecraft around the year 1959, when it happened, and in that region of the Urals of Russia.
Thank you. Who is conducting that investigation?
Dor Kalel, Nishada, Eridiana, and Alanim. So with the best data in hand, it was concluded that nothing out of the ordinary happened there. What happened was that they entered an area near a camp of a hostile tribe that was invading the area that belonged to another friendly tribe, and they killed them so they wouldn't go and say they were there. They were just in the wrong place at the wrong time.
A tribe?
Yes, local tribe, not Russians, although within Russian territory, more like Eskimos. I don't have the names, but there are. The missing eyes on one of the girls, as well as the missing tongue, is due to the fact that her face was in a stream of freezing water that washed away the soft parts. Or her tongue was removed to stop her from speaking, which was common for that invading tribe.
So, no yeti, no reptilian hybrids, no nuclear tests or ships releasing radiation. And the video footage showing a yeti?
The radiation was because two of them worked in a primitive nuclear plant in that area of Russia and had their clothes impregnated and contaminated with radioactive material, since only a year before there was an explosion nuclear accident in that atomic plant, which today is known to be the first accident like Chernobyl or Fukushima, in that the Russian government did everything possible to hide from the public, and that the Dyatlov incident exposed to the world press the contamination of the accident, and that is why so much secrecy fed conspiracy theories. Photo of the Yeti taken by the expedition. I saw it myself, and it looks like it could be just one of them, nothing that would denote anything strange or big. Lights in the sky. There was a military rocket testing station north of there, and they were conducting experiments firing their rockets towards the Ural Mountains, being an unpopulated area. We have no record of ships in the area at the time around January-February 1959. Taking into account these data, it can be concluded quite strongly that it was only murder on the part of a hostile tribe so that they would not tell their position to the Russian authorities and to the other friendly tribe. So it seems with the best data available, nothing unusual happened there. It was just a multiple murder covered up by the Russian government to hide the nuclear accident that happened near there just a few months before. With the data we had at that time, we talked about the Russian Menk Yeti, and that he was brought down by a ship to see what he would do, and he attacked the students. That is what they did or still do. That was logical, but we have new data now.
What do you mean they still do it? Reptiles let yetis loose? For what?
It is not known why exactly, but it is like the chupacabra. They release it to see human reactions and to perfect their creatures. A Russian investigation, or many of them, concludes that they were victims of an avalanche. We, as indicated by other Russian researchers who took part in this latest investigation, agree that it was most likely murder. These are new data, new results. It is most likely. They went into territory controlled by a hostile tribe.
And to cover up the nuclear accident in the process.
That's right. That's what caused the secrecy, because well into the 2000s, the Russian government did not accept the existence of that accident with a nuclear plant, and two of the guys on the expedition worked there, and one of them was even part of the cleanup of the disaster at the plant. One of the girls also showed signs of radiation, but it is known that she was wearing a sweater that belonged to one of the boys who did work at the nuclear plant. So with these facts, unless new ones come in, which I doubt, the Dyatlov Pass was of very human origin. To Caesar, what is Caesar's?
Governments, especially the US government, hides them and all their evidence under the same parameters or tricks they use for UFOs. They use ridicule and denial. Joke, a Bigfoot claims to have seen Chuck Norris once. But there they are, and the rangers know it, but prefer to keep quiet, to keep their mouths shut, like pilots with UFOs. But recently, many rangers are already speaking out, as the Bigfoot have become more hostile, either because their natural habitat has been greatly reduced and they become angry, desperate, or the reptiles at bases like Dulce, dumb, are releasing them for purposes of inciting terror. The last major incident recorded by us that did not make it into the public eye is that a Delta Force team entered Mount Shasta National Park with the assignment to find and kill a killer Bigfoot that had already been or was getting out of control. Out of a team of 12 Delta Force, 8 of them lost their lives. This happened on January 6, 2018 of this year. Also, during the Mount Santa Elena explosion in 1981, the National Guard was taking out entire truckloads of Bigfoot killed by the volcano in military trucks. Likewise, we also have on record a Chinese twin-rotor helicopter carrying it out of the volcano-affected area in a net hanging below. They are very real. They are just hidden by the government. In itself, that's what the rangers are for, to contain them. It is said that it is the reptiles that abduct the missing, and I don't doubt it. But more than 90% of the cases are by the Bigfoot. Second conversation.
Are Sasquatch intelligent like humans? From what you told me, they are aggressive and carnivorous.
You cannot measure one creature by the intelligence parameters of another. However, in many ways, yes, they are more intelligent. Just because they do not have an advanced civilization, as you would expect an advanced creature or being to have, does not mean that they are not. It just means that they have transcended the need to have a civilization, as they carry everything inside them. They are highly telepathic to the degree that 3D frequencies do not affect them. That is why they are the subject of research by Eridania and team at the Ventra. Other examples of creatures extremely evolved in consciousness to the degree of not needing a society or a civilization as such are those of the cetacean group, dolphins and whales, all highly telepathic. They have their world inside. They are also unaffected by artificial 3D lunar frequencies.
You mean, Swaruu, that there are beings on Earth that do not get affected by lunar frequencies? But why?
When the frequency is high enough and the power output is also too high, they are simply not on the same existential plane as the lunar frequencies. Just because they have a physical body on one plane does not mean that they are there in consciousness. A physical body is only a projection on the lower plane of an idea, of an intention of something above. That is to say that if, for example, the lunar frequencies are transmitting in an AM radio range, everything that is on FM will not be affected. Whales and Sasquatch, among other beings, are on FM. Humans and their consciousness are on AM, so it affects them more, generalizing.
Okay, I understand. To give an example, autistic children are in this dimension, but their consciousness would be in another?
Partly, yes, but it's more like my example with radio frequencies.
Okay, thanks. But Sasquatch and whales, dolphins and cetaceans are a little different in the way that they act towards humans. The marine animals are friendly and the Sasquatch are not.
That is due to other factors, not only in terms of frequency range, strictly speaking. In itself, Sasquatch have better ways of sheltering and disappearing than cetaceans that can't hide. That's why cetaceans try to be friendly, perhaps. Sasquatch do not. Also because of the very nature of the being. The Sasquatch can be very aggressive, and they are also very afraid of humans because they are invasive. Humans have also limited their habitat a lot, so they can't find enough food, and this causes them to resort to human flesh. Even so, the Sasquatch population has increased, not declined in recent years, adding to the problem. And they are not just one variety. They are several varieties, at least 5 distinct ones. All are aggressive, although it depends on an individual. There are many that are friendly to some humans, and all are carnivores.
Do they live in tribes?
Yes, although many work or live alone, especially the large males. They are semi-intraterrestrial. They only come to the surface to hunt. They use subterranean networks of labyrinths that they make themselves, or use natural formations as well. They use traps like the spider's nest, which consists of a tunnel that leads to a cave and has a very heavy lid made of flat rock filled with plants on top that weighs over a ton that they easily lift to give access to the surface. They climb out, grab a hiker, and disappear, covering the opening again. Rescuers could walk over the entrance, step over it, but it's so big they cannot see it. They would need to search the whole area with ground-penetrating radar. Even then, it's difficult because of the terrain.
What a terrible death. What an unpleasant experience for hikers.
They like children. They are easier to eat, but there is evidence that they sometimes keep human children as pets.
You're leaving me speechless.
There are already Sasquatch all over the world, but with the greatest concentration of large species in North America and Siberia in Asia.
Have you seen one of these Sasquatch? Like up close?
Not up close, only with on-screen instrumentation. In Russia, they call them menk, and they are as real as bears. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Let me just restate, and for that let me just go back to my normal self. Please remember this information is real. It's not something as a joke, given as a joke, even though I may be acting and looking a bit weird, but this is just because of the season. However, the information is very much real. Enjoy it, and I'm going to see you in the next video about the vampire.